Hello, everybody, and welcome into the Star Wars Legends Lounge, the show that celebrates the books from Star Wars Legends. I'm Aaron Motes. On today's episode, Luke Skywalker receives a vision from the Force of the dark side rising and the galaxy in chains. But while Darth Caedus unleashes a terror campaign aimed at bringing order to the galaxy, one person steps forward to stop him: his sister, Jaina Solo. It's Invincible by Troy Denning, the 9th and final book in the Legacy of the Force series. And joining me to wrap up the series, it's Scott. He's back. Scott, how are you today?
I'm great, man. I'm doing good. Ready to wrap this series up with some fireworks, I think.
Oh, it should be a good one. Now, Scott, this episode will post the day after Christmas, but to give the listeners a look behind the scenes, you and I are recording this about a week prior. So how's your holiday season been going so far this year?
A bit chaotic, Aaron. A bit chaotic. A bit behind on the Christmas shopping. I got laid off last week.
Oh my.
it's been a, trying to get benefits sorted out. It's been a little rough, but you know what? We will persevere.
Well, in light of that news, I still hope you have a great Christmas.
We will. It'll be fine. It's going to be fine. I'm fine. Everything's fine here. How are you?
Nice. Listeners, whichever holidays you celebrate, I hope you all have a pleasant, peaceful holiday season this year. Now, Scott, I have a feeling this is going to be a lengthier episode than what we normally have. So
I hope so.
Let's go ahead and get it started with a listener question. Today's question comes from frequent emailer to the show, Robin, who says, "Hello, Aaron. Looking back at Darth Vader's fall to the dark side, I would say Emperor Palpatine had an easy job. Most of the non-Jedi that worked with Anakin had already joined the Empire. The clone troopers, Moff Tarkin, Wolf Yularen, etc. I still think this was Palpatine's best trick, creating the Empire under the very nose of the Jedi Council. What do you think?" Well, Robin, thank you very much for the email. Scott, how about you answer this one first?
I love the thought process there, and I think in general I agree with the email. Now, I think the way the Palpatine brought Anakin along was a huge trick, and watching that, we've talked about this before, Aaron, you and I think on the podcast, and also just you and I as friends, watching that development of that relationship in the Clone Wars animated series really highlights some of that relationship cultivation that Palpatine engineered with Anakin, and I think probably it shows a similar path that he took with everything else he did. And to that point, I agree with the email. I think the series we're closing out tonight underlines, bolds, and italicizes as well. Jason's biggest problem in accomplishing what, Palpatine was, also was successful in accomplishing, is that he was maybe impatient. He had some different factors spurring him on, like, the war with Corellia, but it forced him to use tactics that isolated him from everyone else. Palpatine did this over long stretches of time, and he, converted Anakin. He brought Darth Maul into the fold somehow. I don't know if we know that story, really. I don't. We have also Christopher Lee. Oh my gosh, how have I forgotten? Dooku. Thank you, Count Dooku, as well, brought into the fold. He cultivated these relationships over time and through manipulation, and I think that's probably his biggest and best trait: manipulation of people over time. And I feel like Jason was on like a more abbreviated and urgent schedule.
I would agree with most of that. To answer Robin's email, yes, with the clone troopers specifically, they were created to be the initial Imperial troops. And by including the inhibitor chips and the programmed training by the Kaminoans, they didn't have a choice in the issue. With the other people that Robin was talking about, I think one of the things that Palpatine was best at wasn't just manipulating people, but it was reading people. He could read the people who would be open to what he was selling. I think Moff Tarkin, Wolf Yularen, Anakin, all of these people were open to the things that Palpatine was selling. Yeah. They all had to make their own choice. Palpatine stacked the deck and sort of gave them a false choice, but they still had to choose to follow him. And in that sense, yes, I would agree with Robin. The most impressive thing that Palpatine did was to go ahead and have the Empire set up basically before beginning the Clone Wars, and then allowing the Jedi to basically willingly walk into his trap.
Yeah, he didn't upset the apple cart, right? He approached the apples that he saw could be bad, to extend the metaphor a little bit, and avoided the ones that he knew wouldn't go along, right? And
exactly.
in such set up a system that was ready to kind of take over when the time came. Yeah. I like the way you put that, Aaron.
Thank you very much for the question, Robin. Listener, if you have a question for the show, you can send an email at swlegendslounge@gmail.com or send me a message on Blue Sky, Instagram, or Twitter at swlegendslounge. Now, coming up at the end of the show today, Scott and I have 2 more emails to read. These are from listeners who disagree with some of the opinions that Scott and I have shared while discussing the Legacy of the Force series. But now it's time for today's book, Invincible by Troy Denning, the final book in the Legacy of the Force series. Listener, as I said, it's going to be a little bit of a long one today, so get that drink ready, and let's head in to the Star Wars Legends Lounge.
The story begins in the Roach sector. Darth Caedus and Imperial Moffs attack the Verpine, trying to steal the insect's advanced technology. Boba Fett and the Mandalorians battle through the tunnels on Nickel 1, an asteroid containing the primary Verpine munitions factory. Jaina Solo, Fett, and a group of Verpine try to make their way to the hangar and their ships. But before they can, the Imperials release a deadly nanovirus into the asteroid's ventilation system. The gas kills the Verpine, but Jaina and Fett manage to survive and make it to the hangar. Fett orders Jaina to leave Nickel 1 and find the new hidden Jedi base. The Mandalorians need help, and Jaina needs to prepare herself for a showdown with her brother.
Luke Skywalker and the Jedi Council plan to infiltrate Coruscant and steal information leading them to Caedus. The plan is simple. Ben will contact his former commander, Lon Shevu, who will hopefully be able to pass on any information on Caedus' whereabouts. Jaina and Leia will pilot the getaway ship and serve as Ben's backup team. Disguised as a tourist, Ben sets up a meeting with Shevu in Monument Plaza, hoping to hide in plain sight. Shevu tells Ben that Caedus has left the Anakin Solo in orbit above Coruscant and taken a private skiff to Nickel 1. As Ben turns to leave, he receives a warning from Jaina in the Force. He's been spotted by the GAG.
Ben turns away from where Jaina and Leia are waiting. He starts to flee, but it's no use. Shevu tries to create a diversion, acting like he's trying to arrest Ben. The two grapple, and Ben shoots his blaster into the air. The commotion starts a panic with tourists running out of the plaza in all directions. But the GAG quickly surround Ben, led by Tahiri Vela. Shevu makes one last attempt to help Ben escape. He fires at the officers, but it doesn't work. Shevu takes a blaster bolt to the chest, and Tahiri closes the trap and captures Ben. Jaina and Leia steal a medical vehicle and try to follow Tahiri and Ben, but they fly straight into the GAG ambush. Jaina is forced to end their pursuit and abandon Ben while they escape the planet.
When Jaina and Leia return to base and tell the Jedi Council what happened, Luke seems unfazed. He says he knew Ben would be captured. He had a vision of it. When they ask how they'll find Cadus now, Luke says he knows where his nephew is. The Force showed him that Cadus is on Nickel 1, and now it's time to go after him. Luke says that he will lead a team to the Roach system and keep the Alliance and Imperial ships occupied while Jaina goes after her brother.
The strike team arrives at Nickel 1, and Luke tricks the Mandalorians into providing them cover while they fly in close to the asteroid. When they reach the drop point, Jaina closes up her vacuum suit and launches herself out of the airlock. She dives toward the planet, hoping to avoid detection from the enemy fighters. But of course, she gets spotted by one of the Imperial ships. Jaina tries to remain calm as the fighter zooms in to investigate. Just as it gets close, Jaina ignites her lightsaber and jabs it through the front of the cockpit canopy. The impact sends Jaina tumbling, but she soon regains control of her fall and watches the fighter explode into the surface of Nickel 1. Jaina fires her maneuvering jets and lands safely on the asteroid. She moves quickly to find her entry point to the facility, hoping the Imperial pilot wasn't able to call in her position before he was destroyed.
On Coruscant, Tahiri begins interrogating Ben, trying to discover the location of the hidden Jedi base. At first, she flirts with Ben, trying to use his teenage hormones against him. When that doesn't work, she has the GAG rough Ben up a little. But the young Jedi holds firm. More than that, Ben can tell that Tahiri doesn't want to be torturing him. "You don't want to do this, do you, Tahiri?" Ben asks. "You don't like what Jason's doing, do you? So why do you follow him?" But Tahiri slaps Ben. She asks why he can't see that Darth Cadus is trying to stop all the fighting and bring peace to the galaxy. "I may not be able to beat the information out of you," she says, "but I know what will make you talk."
Meanwhile, Jaina enters the munitions facility and meets up with Mirta Gev and her strike team. Mirta says they'll help Jaina find her brother, but after she helps them find where the Moffs are hiding. The team battles their way through the factory, fighting through stormtroopers and Alliance guards. They corner the Moffs in a small auditorium. But before they burst into the room, Jaina heads up to an overhead control room to wait for her brother to arrive. When Jaina gets into position, the Mandos burst through the door to the auditorium and kill 2 of the Moffs before their guards even begin returning fire. As the blast bolts light up the auditorium, Jaina assembles her sniper rifle. She lines her sights up on the door, knowing that Cadus will be here soon.
Tahiri has Ben brought to the side of Shevu's medical bed. The captain is still alive, but on life support. Tahiri tells Ben that if he doesn't tell her the location of the Jedi, she'll torture Shevu and make Ben watch. Still, Ben refuses. So Tahiri shocks Shevu with Sith lightning. When Ben still won't talk, Tahiri does it again. But this time something goes wrong, and Shevu flatlines. Tahiri killed him. But Ben can sense that she didn't mean to. She's horrified at what happened. Ben seizes the opportunity and breaks free of his 2 guards. He jumps Tahiri and knocks her out, grabbing her lightsaber. He escapes GAG headquarters and vanishes into Coruscant's Undercity.
Darth Cadus enters the auditorium and immediately slices through the Mandalorians. He uses the Force to fling Mirta across the room. She slams into the back wall and falls to the floor head first. Even through the noise, Jaina hears a crack, and Mirta's body remains still. As Cadus advances on the next Mandalorian, Jaina begins firing at her brother. He blocks her shots, and then takes the head off the nearest Mandalorian. Jaina fires again and again, exhausting her cartridge. As she reloads, Jaina hears Cadus tell the stormtroopers to take care of the sniper. He'll handle Skywalker. What? Jaina thinks. But she doesn't have time to figure out what's happening to her brother. As the troopers enter the control room, Jaina ignites her lightsaber and leaps down to the room below. She slashes at Cadus, but he blocks and knocks her to the floor. Jaina rolls to the side and comes up swinging. Brother and sister duel, but Cadus seems confused. While he's distracted, Jaina spots an opening and chops down through her brother's shoulder, severing his arm. Cadus falls back and uses his other hand to blast Jaina with force lightning. As she falls to the floor, Cadus stares at his sister. "You!" he shouts, stunned. Cadus flees, and a wounded Jaina is forced to escape Nickel 1, having failed to stop her brother.
Ben escapes Coruscant and meets up with a pair of Hapan agents sent by Queen Mother Tenel Ka. The women promise to take Ben back to the Jedi base on Shedu Mod, a world hidden inside the transitory mists of the Hapes cluster. They're tracked down by Cadus's fleet en route, but before they're captured, Prince Isolde arrives with a small fleet of his own. There's a short battle, but Isolde's fleet is badly outnumbered. The prince is captured, but his ships are able to create enough of a diversion to allow Ben and the Hapan agents to escape and make it back to Shedu Mod.
As Jaina recovers from her injuries, she tells her parents and her uncle about the fight with Cadus. Jaina says her brother has grown even more powerful, but she says the entire time they were fighting, Cadus was acting strangely. "He called out your name, Uncle Luke," Jaina says. "He seemed surprised that I was there." Luke tells Jaina that's because for weeks he's been using the Force to send Cadus visions of himself, drawing her brother's attention so he wouldn't expect Jaina to be the one confronting him. Luke says when Jaina and her brother were fighting, Cadus saw his uncle. It wasn't until Luke was completely exhausted that the vision failed and Cadus was able to see Jaina before him. "But that trick won't work again," Luke tells Jaina. "Your brother knows what I was doing. Now we must prepare, because Cadus is coming to Shedu Mod."
The battle begins. On one side, we have the combined Galactic Alliance and Imperial Fleet. On the other, the Jedi and the Hapans. Darth Cadus has the numbers and the firepower, but Luke and Tenel Ka control the field. The route through the transitory mist to Shedu Mod is congested, and our heroes use it to their advantage. They hide in the mists until Cadus's ships advance, and then they ambush them. Both sides know that eventually the Sith Lord's forces will overwhelm the Hapans, but not without incurring tremendous casualties. The Moffs know that Cadus wants to win quickly, and they use Prince Isolde's DNA to develop another nanovirus, this one designed to wipe out the royal bloodline. The weapon enrages Cadus. He did all of this to protect Tenel Ka and their daughter. Cadus forbids the Moffs from deploying the nanovirus. But he's too late. The virus has already been unleashed.
While the battle rages, Jaina sneaks aboard the Anakin Solo. Her search for her brother leads her to the medbay, hoping he's still there recovering from the wounds she inflicted on him during their recent duel. Jaina doesn't find Cadus, but shockingly, she does find Mirta Gev. Alive! It turns out Cadus didn't kill Mirta in the auditorium, but he did break her spine, leaving Mirta paralyzed. Mirta says that Cadus offered to heal her in exchange for the truth about how many Jedi had attacked him in the auditorium. When Mirta answered that it was just Jaina, Cadus doesn't believe her. She says he had an Imperial doctor take a sample of her blood to create a virus he would release on Mandalore. So, Mirta says she told Cadus what he wanted to hear. Both Luke and Jaina had attacked him. She says Cadus ordered the doctor to treat Mirta's paralysis, and the treatment's working. Mirta says she's starting to get feeling back in her legs, and she can move her right arm and hand. Jaina tells Mirta she's sorry for leaving her before, and also that she has to leave her again. She must find Cadus and end his reign of terror.
While Jaina is talking to Mirta, Cadus confronts Isolde. He tells the prince about the nanovirus the Moffs created from Isolde's blood, but the prince doesn't believe him. Cadus pleads with Isolde, help him contact and warn Tenel Ka. But again, the prince denies Cadus. Desperate and furious, Cadus lashes out with the force and snaps Isolder's neck, killing him. Cadus gathers up the prince's body and takes it to the ship's incinerator to keep the moths from using his DNA again. Cadus drops Isolder's body into the immolation pit and then turns to leave. But the Sith Lord finds his exit blocked by the sword of the Jedi.
Jaina attacks, taking Cadus by surprise. But even with one arm, her brother is more powerful, and he's able to push back her attack. But both of the Solo twins are still hurting from their previous duel, and neither one is really able to gain an advantage. At one point, Jaina pushes Cadus back toward the opening of the immolation pit. She tries to push Cadus in, but he dodges and slams his sister up against the frame of the pit's door. It burns her face and back and sets part of her hair on fire. Cadus backs up as Jaina spins away. "Jaina, stop!" Cadus screams. "I don't have time for this. I have to save Tenel Ka and Alana." It's a trick, Jaina thinks. It has to be. Wounded and exhausted, she opens herself fully to the Force. She leaps at her brother. Their lightsabers whirl and both strike each other. Cadus slashes Jaina across the stomach, but not deeply. Jaina strikes Cadus in the leg, slicing through his tendons. He falls and drops his lightsaber to the side. Jaina swings her blade down one final time. But Cadus doesn't try to defend himself. Instead, her brother sends out a final thought in the Force, warning Tenel Ka about the nanovirus. Jaina's lightsaber slices deep into Cadus' chest and through his heart. Her brother, Jacen Solo, the Dark Lord of the Sith, is dead.
With Darth Cadus gone, the battle wraps up quickly. Ben and the Jedi capture Tahiri, and Jag and the Hapans arrest the Moffs and force them to surrender. In the aftermath of the fighting, Luke offers to let the Moffs go free. Someone needs to help the Remnant and the rest of the galaxy rebuild, and their knowledge and resources will come in handy. The catch? Jag Fell will assume the role Admiral Pelion had in the Imperial Remnant. If the Moffs refuse, Luke will turn them over to Tenel Ka and face her vengeance for unleashing the royal nanovirus. The Moffs agree, but not before facing the Queen Mother. Tenel Ka stands before them, a beacon of controlled fury. The Queen Mother was able to save herself from the virus, but not her daughter. The heir to the Hapan throne, the Chumeda, Alana, is dead. But Tenel Ka does not demand justice from the Moffs and agrees to Luke's plan. She allows them to return to Imperial space.
Han and Leia find their children in the incinerator room on the Anakin Solo. Jaina, burned and broken on the floor, cradling Jacen's body. They take their daughter back to the base, and in Jaina's medical room, the Solos mourn Jacen's death together. In the following days, the Galactic Alliance elects a new Chief of State, former Imperial Admiral Natasi Daala. Boba Fett arrives and reunites with Murda. Sadly, he tells his granddaughter that the Empire was successful in unleashing the nanovirus on Mandalore. Luckily, it was designed to attack only Fett DNA, so none of the people living on Mandalore are in danger. But that means he and Murda can never return to the planet. They can't go home. The story ends with Han and Leia talking to Jaina in her recovery room. They talk about the destruction the war has wrought throughout the galaxy and the terrible toll it's inflicted on people, including here in the Hapes cluster. Han says the Queen Mother asked Leia and Han if they would be willing to adopt a young girl, a war orphan named Amelia. Jaina is confused as Leia ushers a girl with short, black hair into the room. Jaina stares at the girl's face, at her familiar button nose and her kind gray eyes. Jaina smiles. "Hello, Amelia," she says. "Welcome to the family."
Time to take a break. When we return, Scott and I will talk more about Invincible by Troy Denning. I'm Aaron Moats. Stay tuned. You're listening to the Star Wars Legends Lounge. Thank you for listening to the Star Wars Legends Lounge, where we celebrate the books from Star Wars Legends. But let me suggest a book from Star Wars canon. Force Collector is the story of Kar Nuke Sin, who's just a typical teenager, except whenever he touches an object, he receives a vision. His parents believe Kar is sick, but his grandmother has a different idea. She thinks Kar is touched by the Force. Kar runs off to find the truth about the Force and about the mysterious people called the Jedi. Will he learn the answers to his questions? Or will Kar be stopped by the First Order? Check out Force Collector by Kevin Shinnick. Welcome back to the Star Wars Legends Lounge, the show that celebrates the books from Star Wars Legends. I'm Aaron Moats, and today, Scott and I are discussing the Star Wars Legends novel Invincible by Troy Denning, book number 9, the finale of the Legacy of the Force series. Well, Scott, it's been a long road. Before we get into specifics, what did you think overall about the finale of this series?
Well, before I talk about the finale, just thank you for including me, in the discussions.
You're welcome.
It's been fun to go on this journey. You do a great job corralling all of this massive amount of information, and it's been really fun to be a part of it. Sometimes how it's tough to wrap up a sitcom, tough to wrap up a story. It feels like, especially today in media, they're always trying to look forward toward the next thing. It felt like a lot of this book to me was wrapping up the story that, we kind of, for the last 8 books, we've seen where this is going. Feels like we know roughly how it's going to end. And it felt like a lot of it was maybe even set up toward what's coming next. It's a good book. I enjoyed it thoroughly. I got through it very quickly. The Jaina Jason stuff is fascinating. That twin relationship is interesting to read, and they threw in some interesting Luke stuff as well, and force things that I wasn't really aware of. I really enjoyed the book. I have complicated feelings about some of the decisions made at the end, and some of the direction it seems like they're taking going forward. But as a close out to the series, I really enjoyed the book.
I think the main topic in the book is the showdown between the Solo twins, both of them. The first one about midway through the book, and then the second one with only a couple chapters to go. For those of us that have read the majority of the Legends timeline, we remember when the Solo twins were born back during Timothy Zahn's original Thrawn trilogy in the early 90s. We've grown up with them. We've seen them from infants. We've seen them as youngsters when authors would have kidnap plots for the kids, like in 10 different books, it seemed like. Mm-hmm. Then we had the Young Jedi Knights series where they're teenagers at Luke's academy. Of course, we have the New Jedi Order series where it seems like most of that series was turning it over to the next generation of Jedi, with Jason and Jaina in the leadership positions of that next generation of Jedi Knight. Mm-hmm. And now we see it come full circle the Yuuzhan Vong talked about how their twin gods battled each other.
Mm-hmm.
And it finally came true. It came true in this series. I know you are not familiar with all of the stories with Jaina and Jacin, but you are aware of the timeline. What are your feelings with how the story of the Solo twins wrapped up?
It's a good question. I love Jaina. I think she's fantastic. I loved her arc in the Yuuzhan Vong War and what she went through, her flirtation with the dark side, and how she became what seemed like an unstoppable pilot in that arc. Literally almost an invincible pilot, it seemed like, in that arc.
Up until he was captured and tortured, Jacin was your favorite character in that series through the first, 9 or 10 books.
Correct. I was about to get to Jacin. Jacin was my favorite character in that series. I think overall, in general. I mean, I had some quibbles with the amount of cranial absorption he was going for with all of his decision making, but he was definitely my favorite character in that series throughout. I just wanted to say I love Jaina too. And, as you see the corruption work through Jacin in this series, and you start trying to measure the twins against each other, which is terrible. I'm married to a twin. They don't ever want to compete against each other. They just want to love each other and have more and create more memories with each other. And so seeing that conflict is hard. You're right. I didn't grow up with, reading all of the stories of them as kids. I've only seen their relationship really in the Yuuzhan Vong War and here. But I think those two series did a good job of defining that relationship. And it was one of the things this series did, this last book did, is they have these little jokes from Jacin at the forefront of lots of the chapters to just remind us that these were children. At the beginning of all these chapters are little jokes that Jacin is making as, a 13, 14, 15-year-old. And we have to remember that it honestly was brilliant. I don't know whose idea it was, but just reminding us that Jaina grew up with this kid that she's trying to kill. And a lot of the theme in this book is about letting go of Jacin and embracing the fact that he is now Caedus. And still, even with that theme, they keep throwing these jokes at us to remind us that he's Jacin still, right? It's a brilliant tactic. So the question you asked, how do I feel about the end of the Solo Twins or the conclusion of this Solo Twins adventure? Really well done. I really enjoyed it. I love Jaina. I loved Jacin, and really empathize with the path that he took to get to Caedus.
The jokes are jokes that Jacin made in the Young Jedi Knight series.
Those were actual jokes in the books?
These were actual published jokes from the Young Jedi Knight series by
That's amazing.
Kevin J. Anderson and his wife, Rebecca Moista. In that series, Jacin and Jaina, Tanel Ka, and their friend Lobaka are teenagers at Luke's academy.
Yep.
And Tanel Ka is this ultra serious combination Dathomiri warrior and Hapan princess.
So she hasn't changed.
Correct. And in order to get her to lighten up, Jacin constantly berates Tanel Ka with these jokes to try to get her to laugh, knowing that they are terrible jokes. They are horrible.
I love it.
But it was a really nice, depressing, joyful, bittersweet callback, especially for folks who grew up with the Jaina and Jason story.
And it even worked for those of us that didn't. Like, we can, even though I didn't know that these were published jokes, part of their history, it still works to remind us that kids are kids, and they grow up into people that are sometimes flawed, but they were kids once, and they had this youthful joy and energy and innocence, and Jason for sure did. Jaina mentions multiple times, just what a light presence Jason was as a child, and his love of biology and animals and things. It's just a good reminder to keep there in your conscience as you read about these terrible things this other character is doing. It's wonderfully done.
Throughout this entire series, and most especially in this book, Jaina's thoughts are to the brother she grew up with, but she constantly reminds herself that he's gone and Cadus is what remains. I honestly don't know if she believes that. I think it was a survival
mechanism.
Yeah, it was a survival mechanism. She had to constantly remind herself, because the one thing she did admit is that when she confronted her brother, if she let any doubt creep into her mind, her brother was going to kill her.
Yeah.
So I think she kept having this inner monologue. It's not Jason anymore. It's Cadus. It's Cadus. And every time she would talk about him with her parents, and her parents would talk about him, they would say Cadus. They wouldn't say Jason. Han said his son was dead and gone multiple times in the last few stories.
Yeah, I think it was the last two books where he kind of came to that. Yeah.
Leia was the only one, while she accepted the fact that her son had fallen to the dark side, she still would occasionally call him Jason. Jaina and Han would only call him Cadus. Leia would sometimes, but other times she would say the name Jason.
In this book, she said Jason?
I don't remember if it's in this book, but I know it's been in the last couple.
She let it linger a little longer than the others. In this book, there's a moment when Jaina realizes what the blood drops on her face did, that they were a tracking mechanism.
Right, we didn't talk about that in the plot summary. After their first duel, when Jaina cuts off Jason's arm, some of his blood spatters on the side of her face and down the side of her neck. Mm-hmm. When she gets back to Shadow Mod and is in her recovery room, she can't get the blood stains off, and she can't figure out why. And it's not until Luke tells her, that's actually one of Jason's new force powers. He learned that studying with the Dathomiri Night Sisters. What he's actually done is he's tracked you here, and that's how we know he's coming.
Out damn spot. It's big Macbeth vibes. Scrubbing the blood. She scrubs the blood, tries to get it off, scrubbing the blood. Out damn spot. Lady Macbeth says in Shakespeare's work. And it's that moment when Luke reveals that to her that she finally lets go of him. And it's, I don't know, 3/4 of the way through this final book where she finally gets to where Han was a couple books ago, maybe, where there is no more Jason. She thought she saw something in his eyes in that battle on Nickel 1 that maybe was Jason, when he says, no, fire over here away from my sister. Well, he didn't know it was his sister, I guess. Fire away over here. She saw something in his eye that she thought might be Jason. No, he was just letting her escape so she would lead him back to the Jedi base. And that's when she knew there's nothing left of this guy.
Let's talk about the fights themselves.
Sure.
You have spoken in the past about Troy Denning's writing and how you enjoyed his descriptions of the duel between Luke and Jason a couple books ago.
I did like that one.
Were
freeing Ben, yeah?
Was the way these two duels were written, was it similar? Did you enjoy the descriptions used in these? Were they easy to follow the action?
Yeah, mostly. I had trouble imagining the crematorium bay area, like conveyors and boxes and things of equipment. I had trouble imagining that, and so maybe there could have been more description around some of that. Go ahead.
I do think the setting of that one was a little more difficult to imagine than the auditorium was.
Yes. The auditorium I thought was pretty well done.
It's not a big auditorium. They made it sound like it. When I say auditorium, I'm not talking about a big theater. It was an auditorium, but it was smaller.
Yeah, I figure like 50 seats or something. Like
something like that.
Yeah, right.
Not like a big movie theater of 200 seats or anything.
Yeah, no. No, I didn't think that. More like a small lecture room or something in a college.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, that's what I kind of pictured. I thought so. I don't remember how well they described it, but that's the picture I had. It worked for me. I thought it was good. The observation room versus the theater, I couldn't understand exactly the transparisteel glass in the way. Like I didn't understand all the logistics around what kept them separated at times. But in general, I felt pretty good about those scenes. The action itself, once she was down there with him, I thought was phenomenal. Even before she got there, when she was shooting and the Mandalorian was in the way and Jason was like using the body to like shield himself, I thought was really well done. Yeah,
for those who watched the second season of Andor, that reminded me of K2SO using the body of that one Imperial in the hallway as he's carrying it down the hallway, and they're the last Imperial is shooting at K2SO, and he's just using the body in front of him. I actually imagined that when I was rereading this.
That's nice. I didn't think about that, but that's good. But yeah, I thought it was good. You're of course in that first auditorium battle, you're interspersed with these weird, Luke interjections, which are a little bit confusing. But in general, I liked the action. I really liked, the way using the vibroblade to slice through the arm was described, to sever his arm. I thought that was really well done. I liked it. I liked that action scene for sure. The second one, I know, I've been talking forever. The second one, I feel like it was... did I want more? Listen, one of the guys is missing an arm, and the other one's severely wounded from a previous battle as well. So I don't know what more I wanted. I think the second battle felt more about the emotional impact of the two of them dealing with this than it was the physical component. And
I understand. You didn't want it to end. You just wanted it to last longer.
I wanted it to be epic, and I think it was. I think it's a hard sale to close.
I have my own feelings on the second one. I'm going to save that for a little later for a topic we have later in the discussion.
Sure. Sorry if I spoiled.
No. You didn't spoil anything. One thing I found curious, in the last book, Jaina spent time with Fett and the Mandalorians learning a different way to fight. And she told Jag 2 books ago that she needed to learn a different way to fight. We don't see much of that. We see it once or twice in the auditorium. I would say we probably don't see it at all in the crematorium, in the incinerator bay. Yeah. Jason was a little more distracted, I think, in that one than he was in the auditorium one.
For sure.
So that one was a little bit different. I have mixed feelings. I wanted to see maybe a little bit more of Jaina's Mandalorian training when she was fighting Jason. However, when she leaves Mandalore at the end of the last book, she does say she still needs to be true to her Jedi identity. So, but I wanted to see a few more aspects of her Mandalorian training. She does shoulder block him once and knock him over the seats of the auditorium. Yep. And she doesn't use her lightsaber to slice off his arm. She grabs a vibro blade, I think from one of the down Mandos that he'd already killed, wasn't it?
I think that's correct. I think so. Yeah.
She grabs a vibro blade because he doesn't expect it coming, and she slices through his arm. So we had one or two of them.
I would argue the sniper component was maybe Mando.
Sure, you're right. The sniper component would have been more Mandalorian. You're correct. So maybe it was more than I remember, but I think a lot of the descriptions, a lot of the narrative of the actual fight between the twins
felt very Jedi. Yeah, I have a note here too. I'm looking at it right now. Jaina was on Mandalore for a whole book, and the whole Jaina story for that book was about absorbing Mandalore culture, understanding how to fight, learning these techniques that were gonna give her the upper hand. She used some of them, I guess, and you could argue that the vibroblade cutting off his arm did result in like a huge advantage in the final fight, I guess.
It did.
It did, for sure. But it didn't feel like that, like, for dedicating a whole book to that journey, the last book for Jaina, it didn't feel like we really got the delivery of the Mandalorian advantage, if you want to call it that.
Because in every other Star Wars property we've seen, lightsabers cut off arms just as easily, if not easier, than vibroblades.
The surprise of the vibroblade attack may have been what caused him to lose his arm, and I can appreciate that. But it didn't feel like we got the real payoff of that whole book of Mandalore training. I would say the whole pain of that book of Mandalore training with Jaina, because she spent all this time learning all these techniques, and it doesn't feel like the author made sure to remind us that this was the benefit of that time spent. We as a reader have to be like, oh, vibroblade or sniper position or whatever, that's Mandalore stuff she learned. It just feels a little bit like the authors composing these books were a little disconnected about how they wanted all these themes to impact.
I could see that. I will say the one thing that still makes me question that a little bit is just, like I said, at the end of Revelation, when she leaves Mandalore and she said, yes, I've been here, now I know how they attack Jedi, but I still have to be true to my Jedi identity.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's true. I just feel, at the very beginning of this book, I feel like Jaina just said, well, yeah, Boba Fett's not trustworthy and they suck. Like she felt like she just dismissed the entire culture she just learned from at the beginning of this book.
Oh, I thought she said Fett was untrustworthy.
Yeah.
But I still think she had a lot of respect for the Mandos that she interacted with there.
She did, but it felt... I felt like the last book and this one, there was a clear disconnect between how Jaina felt about the Mandalorian experience. One was, I'm getting myself ingrained in this. I'm learning from it. I'm just soaking in it. And this book was more, well, I took what they had and, they're a respectable culture, but whatever.
One thing that was very Mando, I would say, one thing that she did take from the Mandalorians was the willingness to leave her allies behind to complete the mission. She does that twice.
True. Yeah, that's true.
She leaves Myrta. I mean, she knows.
She just leaves Myrta twice.
Right, but she knows. And she even tells the Mandos, Cadus is coming in this auditorium.
Yeah.
And when she's up in her sniper's nest, she's thinking to herself, he's going to kill some of these people. I can't stop him from doing that.
Yeah.
And she's willing to let it happen. And I think the Mandos understand that she's going to let it happen.
Yeah.
And then
I don't think that's an anti-Jedi trait though either. They want to save everyone they can, but they understand the sacrifice.
I think
Good.
I think the conversation before they go into the auditorium is she's really blunt about it.
Yeah.
When she talks to Myrta and Myrta's team, she's pretty blunt about it. And then
Yeah,
again,
you're right.
in the med bay, she's pretty blunt about Myrta there. Hey, I'm sorry I left you behind. I've got to leave you behind again because this is more important.
Yeah.
That being said, that may be one criticism I have about these two duels. But for someone who has experienced the entire Jaina and Jason storyline, these duels had an emotional impact on me. And while it may not be the same impact on you, Scott, I think you did get the deep emotional resonance from these duels.
Very much so. Yeah. The last 20 minutes have been us talking about how the Mandalorian component impacted these battles. But I think I said at the beginning when I talked about both of them generically, the second battle feels much more about the emotional component between them than about anything else. There's some physical lightsaber stuff going on, but Jason steps back and says, this isn't what we need to be focusing on. I just need time. I can't deal with this right now. And Jaina is so focused on her goal. It's much more emotional, that second duel. And it absolutely was impactful. Yeah, I didn't mean to undercut that at all. Yeah.
No, I don't think we did. I just, in case the listeners have any question as to whether or not we enjoyed the interaction, the duels between Jaina and Jason, I just wanted to make sure they were crystal clear. We enjoyed them.
Very much. I mean, at the end, I was trying to find the passage, but I'm not going to find it in time. But she literally cuts through his heart, and it talks painstakingly about like going through his body, and he's sending the message, and then it reaches his heart and it severs, and it was extremely emotional.
And then his voice in the Force goes quiet.
Yes, it hit hard. For someone that hasn't been on that whole journey that you've been on, Aaron, it hit hard. It was very well done, I think. The very last part of that.
And I think it ends with him basically on his knees in front of her as he's trying to connect to Tenel Ka.
I don't remember. The image I had was him just kind of standing there with his arm at his side, just kind of wobbling, but barely on his feet. But maybe he is on his knees.
I might have to look that up here in a minute, but I think it says he falls to his knees, and I think it says he tries to use his lightsaber almost to hold him up like a cane.
Yes, it does say that, like a cane, but I don't know what does that mean? Because the lightsaber will just go through the ground.
Right, and
what does that even mean?
Do it, and he drops it. Well, I think it's just a survival instinct at that point.
Yeah,
he's just reaching down to try to keep himself up. So, one aspect in the first fight that I think was really interesting to me as a reader is how it's entirely from Jaina's point of view. And we, the reader, get as confused as she does when Cadus starts acting weird. He shouts, he's over there. He tells the stormtroopers, you go up and get the sniper, I'll take care of Skywalker.
Yes.
And then finally, after Jaina slices his arm off, he uses Sith lightning to blow her back away from him because she's about ready to kill him there.
Yes.
And then, like Jaina describes it, or the author describes it, as his eyes just grow huge, and he's like, you?
Yeah.
And then we learn, a few chapters later, when Jaina's recovering, that Luke has basically been projecting himself into Cadus's thoughts, into his visions, making him see ghosts. I like the way it was revealed in this story.
Yeah. I'm interested because, again, I have not read them all like you have. is this a trick that's been used before, or is this some new technique that Luke is leveraging that nobody else can do? This type of force projection. We see it, actually, in the sequel movies.
We see it in The Last Jedi.
Right, exactly, The Last Jedi.
And we know that Rian Johnson got the idea of this force projection from a small book. It's kind of like a reference book about Jedi abilities. I can't remember the name of the book, but it was printed years ago. Now, that book was not canon at the time or anything, but it was an idea that was used in The Last Jedi. And I do not know if Troy Denning also used the same idea from the same book. He would have had access to it writing for Lucasfilm for these stories. But I think that's an excellent point. It's the same idea.
Yeah. And it's mostly, I mean, we see one of the interesting things we see in this series is the teaching of hiding in the Force to people. Like, it seems very fast. Caedus teaches Ben how to do this in like a chapter. Like, it seems like he has to practice some, but like generally the concept is easy to teach. They teach it to, I think Zek even knows by the end. Everybody freaking knows how to do this now. Like, can anyone learn how to force project like this? Or just because Luke is so strong, he can do this? And I'm even surprised Caedus couldn't, like, detect it somehow.
I just always imagine that making yourself small and hiding yourself in the Force is an easier ability to learn than projecting yourself to the point where you're basically invading someone else's mind, even a powerful Force user, and causing them to see and experience things that aren't there. Yeah. That just seems like it would take more power, ability, and practice than shrinking yourself down inside yourself and hiding like that. That's just to me.
But Lumaya showed some of that, didn't she? Some of that same idea of, like, not herself, but like images or thoughts or things into people. Mm-hmm. Was that the same thing? I'm not sure.
I don't know. I mean, it could be a Sith variation.
Yeah, it's very interesting. It's a thing in this book that was. It's kind of like, well, I've got all this information, but I can't use it because using it would expose it. Luke lets his own son go into this mission, kind of almost knowing that it's not going to work, and he gets caught. Because he says, if I stopped it, then Caedus would know that I was, spying on his thoughts. Yeah. But it almost feels like a cheat code. I can let my characters know whatever they want, but not reveal anything for my plot devices because it would give up the game. It's a little weird.
One of Yoda's teachings is always in motion is the future. I'm sure that the way I would explain it is that Luke foreseeing Ben going on this mission and getting captured is one possible future.
Yeah.
That if he tries to change this one possible future, then he could give something away.
Yeah. About some other possible future.
Exactly.
Maybe even not that direct event, just something later. Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. It just gives a lot of, I guess it's like time travel. It gives a lot of flexibility to the author.
Yeah.
Which isn't bad.
And one of the topics that all three of you guys and I have been speaking about on the podcast since the beginning of this series is Jason's arrogance. And this thing Luke is doing is playing on that arrogance. Jason does not believe anyone else has the ability to come after him. So if Luke keeps him distracted, it allows for another Jedi to be able to get close to him somehow.
Yeah. Definitely. I did have one question about that, about why, after Nickel 1, why Luke thought that trick wouldn't work again. Because Jason is still super confused. He doesn't even believe Merdegev's confession, right? About the fact
right,
that
but we don't know. We don't know if Luke knows that Cadus is still confused. That he thinks that the way I took it is Luke got so exhausted he let the vision fall.
Yep.
And then Cadus saw Jaina. So in Luke's mind, that means, okay, he now knows what I was doing. He'll be ready for that.
Okay, that's fair. I mean, Jason clearly doesn't know that. Doesn't think that.
Correct.
Way. But maybe Luke doesn't know that he knows that he knows that we know that we know that he knows.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's the way I took that.
Okay.
Okay. Now I say now would be a pretty good time to circle back to that thing I wanted to say earlier.
Great.
Before we move off of the Jason and Jaina aspect of this discussion. I have said numerous times, I am not as big of a fan of these books as many Legends readers who love the Legacy of the Force and love Jason's story and Jason's fall to the dark side. For me, it is too much like Anakin's fall in the prequels, and I just don't find Anakin in the prequel films. I didn't connect to the character as much as other people did.
I mean, you did know that he was going to become Darth Vader, so that might...
Well, sure. But what I'm saying is I didn't have the same sympathies that a lot of people expressed on his journey to becoming Darth Vader, on his fall.
Yeah.
And for me, Jason's fall is just too closely reminiscent of that.
Okay.
To make it as interesting as other people believe. And that's fine. We have an email coming up later that disagrees with me. Perfectly fine. I have nothing against anyone that believes the other way. But if you are going to make an homage to Jason's grandfather, because whether or not people believe it's exactly the same or not, it's definitely an homage to Anakin's fall. I mean, Jason thinks about it numerous times.
Yeah.
Exactly.
He flow walks to see it.
Exactly. But my favorite part of the Anakin Vader story is that through the love and the faith of Luke, that there is still good in his father, that Vader / Anakin is eventually able to turn away from the dark side of the Force and return to the light. I think the Legacy of the Force would resonate more with me if, through the faith that her brother still has some good in him, even if he has to die for some reason, like Anakin did, that somehow Jaina would have been able to turn him away from the dark side to allow him to see what he was doing was terrorizing the galaxy and turn back into Jason Solo. And the fact that that didn't happen, I think is probably why Jason's story in The Legacy of the Force does not resonate with me as much as it does with other people who love this series.
But what you're saying is, I think, this story is too close to Anakin's journey, and you don't like that it's so close. But you'd prefer if it was closer, and that he got redemption like Anakin did.
The Anakin story of the prequels has never resonated with me. Vader's arc in the OT has always resonated with me.
Yeah.
An evil person returning to the light.
Right, but
so
still,
I think if you would have had the whole thing, exactly,
the fall is the same. The
sure,
redemption is not the same. But you didn't like that the fall was the same, but you do want the redemption to be the same?
I'm just saying it would have resonated with me. Okay. I'm not saying that it's the most logical point of view to have.
Yeah.
But I think if we would have seen the entire arc, the fall, and then coming back
but
to
then
the
you're
light.
Just getting the same story. It feels like that's what you're complaining about. You just had the same story again.
I think the story of Star Wars always has an aspect of hope for all the characters. Yeah. And in this series, that aspect of hope is not there for Jason, in my opinion.
No, I agree. It's not there for Jason. I don't know. Maybe it's the climate of today, the political climate, the antagonistic climate. I don't know, but I was totally happy with Jason getting his at the end. I did not want any redemption. I wanted his behind in the ground.
Sure. And I
didn't grow up with him. I didn't grow up with the jokes.
No, that's fine.
But I was ready for him to be destroyed.
I am not one that ever says that Anakin was redeemed at the end. That word in describing Anakin returning to the light side, using that word to describe that has always irked me. Because to me, redemption is something you work at after you have admitted to doing something wrong.
Yeah, I'm even further than that from you. I don't believe in redemption at all. You're only as good as your last day, and the things that you've done, recently. Your mistakes still live, and they still haunt people, and they still have effect. And you can do good things after the bad things.
Oh, sure.
But redemption does not exist. It's an everyday act to be good that makes you good.
Right, you and I we disagree on the semantics of it.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Yeah, sure.
I want to see in Star Wars, I want to see...
Hope, yeah.
But I want to see hope. I want to see hope, and I think it would be really interesting to finally get a story about someone working at...
fixing themselves.
Right, and trying to get some redemption from the evil things that they have done in the past.
Kip Duran.
Okay. That's fine.
Get Kat on the phone.
All right. Let's how about a main character?
All right.
A character that everyone has followed. Now, maybe you get a little bit of that in the Bad Batch animated show with Crosshair. Maybe we get a little bit of that eventually with Asajj Ventress. It doesn't seem like they're finished with her. But wouldn't it be interesting for one of these Force users, one of these powerful Force users, especially the ones that have fallen? I understand why Anakin died. Wouldn't it have been interesting if, regardless of what you think, anyone listening, regardless of what they think about if the sequel trilogy was good, was bad, worked for them, didn't work for them, wouldn't it have been interesting if Ben lived and then to see what he has to do or what the galaxy asks of him, whether it be incarceration, whether it be working on helping the downtrodden, just someone trying to do better after they've done something evil. And I know who the audience is on the other side of this line. You're like, no, I just wanted him dead, which is fine.
Well, I think
I would just like to see that story in Star Wars.
It's just interesting, though, because they talk about that a lot. They talk about trying to let Jason come back, and is there a sliver of him to redeem, and can we bring him back and rehabilitate him? Because they've done that in the past with Kip and with a few others. And they just kind of deem that he's not capable of it. But I don't disagree with you. That journey would be interesting to see. Feels like it's just kind of not the story maybe the publishers or the authors thought people wanted to read.
Absolutely.
But I agree with you. That would be interesting to see. We have seen it a little bit with Tahiri Vela.
A little.
And we might see it. I don't know what happens next. It's one of the many questions I have here about what she does next and where this story goes next. But, she was compromised by the Yuuzhan Vong and recovered and has been working toward being better and discovering herself and doing some of that psychological work maybe that you're talking about. But yeah, I agree with you. I think that's an interesting... The human component of recovery and improvement is a powerful one. It's maybe just not what Star Wars readers are looking for.
Hey everybody, allow me to recommend a book from Star Wars canon. Battlefront Twilight Company by Alexander Freed. Inspired by the video game Star Wars Battlefront, Twilight Company tells the story of the 61st Mobile Infantry as they battle Imperial forces on multiple worlds throughout the Mid-Rim. The fighting is brutal and dirty. The soldiers are cynical and bitter, but ferociously loyal to one another. If you want to see the gritty, ugly side of the Galactic Civil War, check it out. That's Battlefront Twilight Company by Alexander Freed. Okay, Scott, well, you mentioned Tahiri. Let's talk about her and Ben.
Yeah.
What did you think? I read some of the notes that you put in our Google Doc. I take it this storyline wasn't as interesting to you as the stuff with Jason, Jaina, and Luke in the book?
No, it wasn't. I feel like it kind of something I alluded to earlier in the conversation. I feel like it's mostly there to set up the future. Even the fact that, like, we've admitted, like, the main conflict and the main point of this book and the entire emotional thrust of it is the Solo twins. The fact that we get this big dynamic battle with a soulful ending in which one of the twins' hearts is severed and dies and their, spirit leaves the Force. Then we get this weird scene with Ben on a planet being pursued by... it felt like a weird vaudeville show with a side distraction juggling clown or something. I don't care about this after I just watched Jason's heart get cut in two. I'm reading about Ben and Tahiri. I don't care. So no.
It was the order of it. If they would have captured Tahiri first on the planet, it would have been better.
Maybe.
But
yeah,
that was more of a denouement. It was more action in the denouement than what should have been after the climax of the book.
The denouement, if you're French. Yeah, the denouement. Agreed. I think if they had ordered it differently, maybe it would have hit me differently. But at the moment, I was like, oh, my heart is wrenched. What's happening on this weird planet with these twins that I don't care about that all of a sudden are important characters? And Tahiri chasing Ben, and why do I care? I've never really cared too much about Tahiri. I've always felt that she was a little bit, I don't know, whimsical and flighty, and I never cared too much for her, but I still don't. I guess is the main message of the B plot. Ben is cool. I think he's fine. He's very Cyclops. He's very Boy Scout. He's very, dressed appropriately, following the lines. He's fine, I guess. But no, it didn't really interest me. It felt like we could have probably lost the whole thing and not missed much, to be honest.
So I think I like the plot better than you did.
Fair to say.
I'm not saying it was the most interesting thing in the world. What I did like, I like that we really got to see Ben use all the skills he learned at the GAG.
He's pretty unique as a Jedi that way, right? He's got these other subversive skills. Jaina too, I guess, right? With her Mandalore training. But like they've got these different skill sets that make them, unique to Jedi.
Right. And it started at the end of the last book when he has his investigation and then he sets out all the evidence proving that Jason was the one that killed Mara. It continues in this one with the way he and Captain Shevu meet in the plaza.
Yeah.
And then when his cover's blown, the first thing he thinks of is, I can't run back to Jaina and Leia.
Yes.
Because it'll blow their cover. I have to run the other way.
Yeah, I'd say it starts way earlier than that. I mean, it starts near the beginning of this series when he starts taking his training from.
Oh, no,
GOG.
yes, absolutely. I'm saying this, the stuff he uses in this one is a great callback to that.
Yes, yeah. It gives him a very unique set of skills.
When he's in interrogation, he thinks about it from the other side. It's almost like he uses the interrogation to pull information out of Tahiri.
Absolutely.
And he thinks consciously about that. If I can just keep her talking.
Yeah, I guess I'd say this. I didn't really love the plot, but I think it was written well. Like, I think they did it well. I think they executed it to a degree where we got value out of those scenes, but I didn't really care for, like, why is this happening?
Sure.
They could have just, like, Luke is feeling all this through the Force and knew that Cadus was on Nickel 1 anyway, so, like, why did he need to sacrifice his son to go on this weird mission? B, how many paragraphs have we read with all these unique communication options that they have to get messages around, that they had to do some clandestine meeting in a public, like, they can't find some other way to meet than this public square that's hidden? It just felt over-engineered and unnecessary to me.
So that part I'll agree with. I think the plot was probably the weakest part of this.
Yeah.
But I enjoyed
the interconnectivity with he and Tahiri was interesting.
Sure. And the further delving into their characters.
Yeah.
In this part of the story.
Yeah.
Tahiri numerous times, you can tell, and we see this part through Ben's eyes, but you can tell Tahiri's disgusted with what she's doing.
Yeah. So I'm jumping a little bit, but can I just ask you, do you think the moment when Cadus tells her about the flow walking reality, is that the moment really that breaks her? Or was she already kind of like, no, I'm leaving this behind?
That's a good question. I'm not sure. I'm not sure it does, because she's still there at the battle in the end, leading the GAG onto the surface of Shedu Mod.
Yep, you're right.
But I will say, I think Cadus telling her the truth about the flow walking is another example of how a Sith master and a Sith apprentice interact with each other, constantly deceiving each other, constantly lying to each other, while still training together.
Yeah. I've said that I don't really like Tahiri a few times through this series and the last one even, I think, probably. But she's not evil. She's not interested in deceiving everyone in every interaction.
Sure.
She's, at her core, she wants to be a happy-go-lucky barefooted girl. Like, she's not a Sith at heart. The fact that Cadus even pursued her as a candidate just shows his lack of options.
Right. I think it's also the reason he chooses her is because she's in pain. And pain is the easiest thing for the dark side, it seems, to manipulate. They can manipulate pain and fear into anger. And from there, you start to make choices that you wouldn't necessarily make if you had your wits about you.
Yep. I agree with that. It's almost why I asked the question. Once the flow walking wasn't real, was she like, oh, well, then I'm out. This is no longer worth it to me.
Maybe it would have been, but it at least wasn't by the end of this story.
You're right. She was still there. I can't actually remember what happens in that last scene. That I know they're falling down the chasm and they're in like the sinking pit or whatever. I don't remember what really did it for her, but it felt almost like, oh, hey, you'll be my friend? Okay, then I'll stop being evil. It didn't feel like there was an emotional click to me that really hit Tahiri harder than that flow walking conversation would have.
Well, no, I think you're right about that.
It felt like a coin flip. It was like, oh, well, you're offering me a way out? All right.
I guess I never thought of it the way you're thinking of it. Maybe after realizing that Cadus was dead, because I'm sure all Force users felt that. Yeah, I'm sure all Force users felt that. Maybe after realizing Cadus was dead and she felt it through the Force, and now someone was offering her a hand to help come back.
Yeah.
She just decided to take it.
You mean deuces aren't wild anymore? Oh, well, I fold. Sure, I'll take your hand.
Yeah, maybe that's what happened.
Yeah. Okay, I buy that.
So, I guess the last part to wrap up. Well, not the last part, but one of the last things to wrap up is the Mandalorian story.
Yeah.
By the way, Luke, pretty devious in this book. Manipulating Boba Fett and the Mandalorians to basically act as their screen into Nickel One, willing to sacrifice many of the Mandos.
Not just a screen, like as their active protecting force for this mission run. And also, he didn't really manipulate. He just showed up knowing they'd do it. He didn't like have conversations with them to convince them. He's just like, well, we're here. If you don't help us, you're screwed. Yeah, it was brilliant. And we saw it. He reveals to the reader his hand beforehand, right? He's like, no, we won't need the owls,
he's not willing
Wookiee.
to bring the Wookiee fighter squadron into that battle. He's not willing to bring the Jedi squadron in that battle. He's like, the Mandos, they're technically neutral in all this. Let's bring them in. They act as our screen. Now they're on our side, whether they like it or not.
Yep. It was brilliant. Yeah.
I think it was just the way he sort of talks about it that, yeah, I was willing to sacrifice these people in order to complete the mission.
No, that's kind of what I meant earlier when I was talking about Jaina and the Mandalorian stuff. It's not anti-Jedi to be like, these are the resources we have. This is the goal we're trying to accomplish. This is what we'll do. Jedi do think that way.
And after that battle...
How many clones did they sacrifice?
After that battle, Fett shows up and he basically tells Luke, this was your one time.
Yeah, that's it. We're not doing this again.
We are never doing this again. And Jedi are no longer welcome at all.
Yeah.
Where Mandalorians are concerned.
He played his card once. That's all he had.
At the end of the story, Boba and Myrta are the only two Mandos that survive that cannot go back to Mandalore. So now Boba is separated from his wife again.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there are planes. She can leave.
Sure. But this series, it did seem like Boba had finally assumed the role of leader of his people. Things were happening on Mandalore. He was calling the Mandos back to the planet. They were rebuilding after the destruction from the Yuuzhan Vong War. They were getting their manufacturing capabilities back up and running. They were entering into treaties with other star systems in the area. Their agricultural facilities were getting back up and running. The people on Mandalore were talking about how there was optimism from the Mandos, and specifically with the way Boba Fett was acting like the Mandalore.
Yeah.
But now he can't go back to the planet.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. I feel like this part goes back a little bit, I suppose, to the disconnect between the authors and their goals. We got a ton of this stuff in Book 8. We got basically none of it in Book 9. We got almost nothing about the Mandalore planet and what's happening with those people, at all, other than that one battle where they participated, right? I think where their planet is headed sounds very different from where their past has been, at least from what I know. Their culture generally is very isolated. They're doing mercenary work all over the place. Barely anyone is even on the planet. But they've called them back, right? That's happened in the last several books. And they're responding. They're coming back to the planet. They're farming. They're building. They're creating ships. They're creating an economy. I think it would be very interesting to see what the Mandalorian culture looks like in 100 years, where their kids are used to just being on the planet in a stable economy, with agriculture and everything. I assume the warlike component would still be there after 100 years, but yeah, I think what they're trying to establish is some order and some normalcy, normalcy from a different perspective than a Mandalorian one. But yeah, I think it's very interesting to see where they're going. Boba Fett is going to have to govern from a ship.
True. I think
I don't think it matters though to Mandalorians. If it doesn't matter to anyone, it doesn't matter to Mandalorians. They don't care where you are. You're doing your job and you're part of our culture, right? So they don't care where he is.
What I think is interesting, and I think it's more interesting now than when it was when these books were published in the 2000s. This series kind of showed Boba Fett growing and changing from this loner, bounty hunter, gunslinger, mercenary into someone who connects more with people and can become a leader of people. But then at the end, I thought it was interesting that they sort of put him back to being the loner again. In canon, where we last left Boba Fett, he has become more of a leader of people. On a small scale, on Tatooine. But I like both characterizations. I like the characterization of him as this cold-blooded loner bounty hunter. I also like the fact that in this story and in canon now, he's evolved as a character. he's grown. I'm not saying one aspect of the character is more appealing to me than the other, because again, Boba Fett's never been the most interesting character to me. But I like the parallels between this story and the canon story we get with Boba Fett now.
I agree. I don't know that they even considered the legends when they went
I doubt it.
Canon.
I doubt they did.
But it's interesting that they landed in the same place, right? Of him taking more of a leadership role because he is so standoffish.
It's hard to do much with the character if they stay as a loner bounty hunter.
Well, he's just floating around in space in his ship. Can you sell a show on that?
He'll show up every once in a while and, torment our heroes.
Episode 2, he's just playing games on his iPad in the ship. That's what episode 2 is. Yeah, they got to give him something to do. I don't know the whole history on the Legends side. It feels like he's kept this whole label just far away from him. And it's such a weird thing. Imagine like the leader of any country just being like, well, I'm the leader, but leave me alone. And I'm not going to do anything for you for, years. Like, you'd just be rejected and replaced. It's a very weird thing to try to relate to. But I think it's interesting now he's thinking about economy and the people. He feels like he relates to the people more. Yeah, that's kind of what I mean when I say it'd be interesting to see what this looks like in 100 years. Like, what changes do they make to make it like a more stable, reliable culture? Or do they even want that?
Right. So let's wrap up our discussion with a couple of other quick hits. I'm not sure I really understand everything that happened at the very end. How Luke just puts Jag in control of the Imperial Remnant. Natasi Dala gets elected in some sort of emergency election to Chief of State. That's the one that I really roll my eyes at. I don't think there's any way that happens legitimately.
Seems weird.
And then the other part while you're reading it is the way Luke and Tenel Ka introduce the plan with Jag and the Moffs to the Moffs themselves. That, look, we really should have you guys executed right now, but we're just going to let you go because we need your resources. We need your knowledge of how to govern. But here's the stipulation. Jag's going to tell you what to do. You're going to follow what he says. We'll let you go back and rebuild and control the Imperial Remnant space. We're not going to take any of your territory back. We're going to leave you that territory, and we're going to let you govern it. But you're going to kind of govern it as a satellite of the rest of the Galactic Alliance because Jag's going to keep you in line. If you don't like that, we're turning you over to Tenel Ka right now, and the Queen Mother can levy her justice. This is the only time I think we really see, it's the only time I can remember, we really see Luke as some sort of cutthroat politician.
Yeah. It's not working for him. He should give up.
There is a conversation in an earlier book between Luke and Mon Mothma where Luke keeps telling Mon Mothma that Leia needs to concentrate on her Jedi training. She needs to learn more. She needs to learn more about the Force. And Mon Mothma throws it back in Luke's face, saying, okay, she's a Skywalker. I understand that. You're also a Skywalker. Why can't you learn how to do some of these things that Leia does? You're a leader. Why can't you be, not saying you got to be in the Senate, but why can't you be more political when interacting with people? other than when he's leading the Jedi Council, this is the one time that I can remember where he really acts like a politician, is the very end of this book.
Not a good one. I think there's a reason he stays out of it, because this seems like a decision to... I mean, authors get to control what happens. I don't know what happens after this. To be honest, I have questions about what, in general, how many books happened in Legends after this, but because I don't know. But, thrusting somebody to be in charge of, I don't know what the Remnant contains, hundreds of millions of people, to someone that doesn't even know they're taking the job seems a tad irresponsible as a politician. Seems like you should consult him first. Jag also is not a politician. He's blunt. He's not streetwise. He's effective in his own way, but he's not a politician in any sense of the way. These Moffs are going to feed him a meal with poison on the first day. He's just not going to make it. It was probably the most perplexing part of this book for me.
It almost sounds like Jag's position is like a colonel beneath a general.
Yeah.
That
listen to your comm link and I'll tell you what to do.
If the chief of state of which, I mean, Admiral Dalla, she's an admiral, but if she's the chief of state now, she can call up Jag at any point in time and just say, hey, this is what we need the Imperial Remnant to do. Have them do it.
Yeah. Which brings me really to my point, if I'm honest. Why do they let the Remnant exist, period? I know Luke won't do it with lightsaber, but let's just execute these guys and get the Remnant under control, because these guys show their stripes every time they get the chance. They're like, well, what can we take? So how about just get rid of them?
Yeah, this is one of the failings of the New Republic. The New Republic then falls during the Yuuzhan Vong War. It's reformed as the Galactic Alliance with an even less centralized government.
Yep.
I don't know why all of these authors in Legends, I mean, in canon, they can do what they want. Maybe they still will at some point. The New Republic era in canon is still pretty open. They haven't told many stories there.
Yeah.
But the New Republic era in Legends, I don't know why they didn't hold the Star Wars version of the Nuremberg trials. I just don't.
Yeah.
Not saying that every single Imperial deserved to be incarcerated at the end, but all the leadership should have been on trial, and all of the leadership should have been incarcerated.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't care about the private, that is...
doing their job. Yeah.
Is the janitor on a Star Destroyer.
Right.
But that is one of the failings of the New Republic, is, okay, when they first formed, they weren't powerful enough to wipe out the Imperial Remnant. Eventually, the Imperial Remnant lost territory, but they were in a pretty well defensible position near the core of the galaxy. It was hard to get there. So they were able to hold out until eventually a truce was signed between the New Republic and the Imperial Remnant, allowing the Remnant to keep the territories that they already had. I still think part of that truce should have included that any current Imperial Moff or the tip top of the Imperial military,
you're out.
You're out.
Yeah.
And the Remnant can hold elections about who now they want to put into power. But the current power structure has to go.
Yeah.
And that just never happened.
Yeah. And also part of the stipulation of any sort of agreement like that would be if you ever raise a hand to us, you're out. And they did. They raised multiple hands several times. So get them out.
I mean, as much as I love the character of Admiral Pelion through the years, and he's the one who signs the treaty with the New Republic, officially ending the war, one of the stipulations should have been that I'm sorry, Admiral.
You're done.
You're done. You're retired.
Thank you for your service,
yep.
man.
Thank you for you're out. He should not have been in command when the Empire entered the fray in the Yuuzhan Vong War.
Yep.
He should not have been in command here.
Yep.
As much as I liked him, he should not have been in that position. The Tenel Ka aspect. I think Tenel Ka and Luke have decided this is killing two birds with one stone. One, keeping the Moffs in line. And two, Tenel Ka protecting her daughter from the constant threat that she's under on Hapes. Because I don't know if it completely got out by the end that Cadus was Alana's father, but regardless of who the father was, they talk about in the previous series, the Dark Nest trilogy, and they talk a lot in this series about how the Chume Da is under constant threat. The heir to the throne is under constant threat. And if she's ever taken out of the picture, then that severely hurts Tenel Ka's position as the Queen Mother of Hapes.
You and I both have read a series called The Song of Ice and Fire, where they frequently use the phrase an heir and a spare. Many times they have an heir and a spare and a spare and a spare and a spare. They have many kids to make sure that killing one of them has no effect. The biggest problem I see is that Tenel Ka does not have multiple heirs.
Correct.
And so she hides this one. And it makes total sense that she hides this one. Maybe should have done it earlier. However, I would say the flaw in that is it puts a pretty huge target on her back, because now the assumption is there is no heir. And so any enemies seeking to take control know that all they've got to do is kill you. And
correct.
So that's it's a bit of a risk she's taking, but I understand why she's doing it, especially knowing that this weapon exists. I assume it still exists. I assume the Moss didn't just release the only version of it they have. They probably still have that.
That we don't know. We don't know.
Yeah, we don't know. I assume they would have made a copy, and kept it. So getting her out of harm's way and, getting a mistaken identity thing going on makes sense. So I agree with the path, the theater of it to the reader. I didn't care for it too much. It never felt real. The way she reacted in that meeting about losing her daughter never felt real to me. It's like, you'd be way more furious than this. It didn't feel real. So I felt like there was something going on from the beginning.
So, last thing, we have a new solo. Amelia.
Is that how they treat her in the books going forward? I don't know. I would still consider her a Hapen. She is royal blood. That's where her family is. That's where she's going to go when all is said and done. They can teach her the solo ways. She can become a smuggler. She can do whatever. In the end, she's going to be a Hapen, to me.
So I'm not going to ruin any books going forward, other than to say that alone on the Falcon, Han and Leia treat her as their granddaughter, and Jaina treats her as her niece. But and of course Luke knows and Ben knows.
Yep.
But whenever anyone else is around, Han and Leia treat her as their adopted daughter. So that's the story of Amelia Alana. Alana.
Abbreviated.
Right. I'm trying to remember her name. It's Alana. I'm trying to remember her official royal name now. I'll have to look it up real quick.
I'll ask a question while you look it up. It seems like she is very force sensitive. She's very intuitive. She can feel things from Jason about him liking to hurt people, she says in this book. I assume they throw her on a fast track towards Jedihood. I don't think, it didn't for Tenel Ka, I don't think that excludes her from Hapan royalty. I'm not saying she won't be a part of the Solo family. I'm just saying she's going to end up being a Hapan.
And okay, there you go. Her full name currently is Alana Jo, DJO. Her mother's name is Tenel Ka Jo, DJO, because Tenel Ka's mother, she was a Dothamiri witch named Tenennial Jo.
Okay.
Isolde does not have a last name. Like a lot of royalty, how they don't have actual last names.
Like Prince.
Right.
My royalty.
Exactly. So it's just Prince Isolde, Tenennial Jo. Their daughter is Tenel Ka Jo, the queen mother of Hapes now. And then her daughter, the Chume Da, is Alana Jo. Or Amelia Solo.
How many books came after this series?
I'm looking over my shelf. It looks like it's just over a dozen.
Okay.
Maybe 14, 15, maybe 15. Well, Scott, it's almost time to go.
All right.
But before we do, we spoke about it earlier. We received 2 emails recently from people who have differing opinions to some of the ones you and I have shared on the show while talking about the Legacy of the Force series. The first comes from Hayden, great name, who disagrees with our interpretations of the flow walking that Jason and Tahiri used to revisit moments in the past. Hayden says, "Hello, Aaron. Having just finished reading Inferno and listening to your discussion with Scott, I would like to share my interpretation of flow walking. I've never watched all the Rebels TV show, but from how you describe the world between worlds, it sounds like it allows you to change things in the past that can change the future. This is different to what I read about flow walking in the prologue of Inferno, when Jason takes Tahiri back to the Merkur mission just before Anakin Solo's death. Tahiri is scared that something they do in the past will change something in the future. Jason says it's unlikely and says that any change that gets made in the past will be corrected by the Force and the flow would return to its present course. I feel like the author put this note in as a way to stop people from asking, why didn't they just go back in time and do X to change the future? I think this also helps these books stay consistent with Yoda's line of, always in motion is the future. Another thing to note is that Jason is only able to flow walk to the past and the location that he's currently in, such as when he flow walks to the crash site of the Tachyon Flyer in the Dark Nest trilogy, and at the Jedi Temple when he watched Anakin Skywalker attack the younglings. This interpretation helps me not be bothered as much by flow walking because it's something Jason uses more to relive the past so he can learn from it, instead of going back and changing what happened.
Our second email comes from Ugo, who disagrees with you, Aaron, and your feelings that Jason's story in the Legacy of the Force series is too much like Anakin's story in the prequels. Ugo says this: what I like about Star Wars is how it takes historical context to tell the story. As George Lucas said himself, and in that context, Jason's downfall works for me because history has taught us that, unfortunately, history will repeat itself. I find discussions of the Jedi and Force interpretations similar to the rupture of Christianity in Europe during the 16th century, mainly on the different interpretations. It would have been interesting to see if it would have led to a Jedi civil war. Anyway, I do not see Jason's downfall the same as Anakin's. For me, Anakin was someone who was never truly free. First, he was a slave boy, and then he was tied to the old Jedi Order. That sense of not feeling truly free to make his own decisions resulted in not being able to help his mother and forcing him to hide his love for Padme. Eventually, this led him to be okay. It led him to be okay for the Jedi Order to die, if that meant that he could be free and be with the woman he loved. On the other hand, Jason is free, has lived with his parents, something that the old Jedi Order didn't allow, and could choose who to spend his life with. In this case, it is Sonal Ka, who must follow Hapi's traditions and keep their love hidden. Jason has witnessed the horrors of war, and during his 5 years of absence, he must have seen other things that shocked him. He falls because he is okay with others to suffer. If that means that his daughter never experiences what he has seen. I would love to read a series of what happened to Jason during those 5 years.
Well, I think that's something that all of us would like to read, Ugo. Thank you very much for sharing your opinion. And Hayden, thank you very much for your email. Scott, I love when our listeners disagree with us and feel like sharing their interpretations of the things we talk about here on the show. I've said it before, one of my favorite things about Star Wars is that it asks questions, and it wants you to ask questions. And people are going to have different opinions and interpretations about those opinions. Thank you again for the emails, Hayden and Ugo. Listener, if you have an opinion you'd like to share, if you disagree with something I've said on the show, you can send me an email at swlegendslounge@gmail.com or send me a message on Blue Sky, Instagram, or Twitter at swlegendslounge. You can send in your questions, comments, or your Star Wars character groupings. I enjoy reading everything you guys send me. Scott, time to wrap up. Thank you very much for joining me today for this entire Legacy of the Force series.
Thanks for having me, Aaron. As I say every time, it's such a joy to talk to you always about this stuff. I have so much fun.
Coming up after the new year, listeners, I'll be starting season number 6 of the Star Wars Legends Lounge. Scott, when I started this, I didn't expect to do it for more than about 6 or 7 months. I figured I'd get tired of it, or life and work would get in the way, and it would make it too much of a hassle to continue. But it's now been 5 full seasons. It's been a great ride.
Yeah, man, I know that feeling. I know it feels great to be a part of something like that. It just, the time kind of just extends before you, and before you know it, you're many years in. I'm glad you found this, that it's been a big part of your life. I'm so happy for you.
Thank you. Coming up in season 6, I'll be jumping back into the prequel era and doing the Jedi Apprentice series. This is a request by 3 different listeners. This is a series that I have never read before. I am not as well versed with the young reader books. And outside of the Anakin Solo young reader series of 6 books, this will be the first set of young readers that I jump into. The Jedi Apprentice series is the legend story of how Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan Kenobi came together and became Master and Padawan. I'll also hit the remaining X-Wing stories next year. And for those of you who have emailed me about all the Legends comics, there have been dozens of you emailing over the years about doing the comics. I will have one episode specifically about the Dark Empire series. I'm going to try to have a guest on for that, because the Dark Empire series of comics, while they are maybe the most important to the timeline of the Legends story, they really did not resonate with me. So I don't want to be just on here bashing them. I am going to try to have someone on here who really enjoys the Dark Empire series, because I don't think it's a good podcast for me to just be on here saying I don't like something. Also in 2026, I'll be doing the Corellian trilogy, the last of the Tales of short story collections. And then in the fall, to wrap up the year, it's the last series of books in the Legends timeline, the Fate of the Jedi series, which may contain a few things relevant to the second season of the Ahsoka television show, which, as of this recording, is scheduled to come out in the fall of 2026. Scott, I'm hoping you and some of the others will be able to come back on the show coming up next year.
Always in motion, the future is.
Listener, thank you so much for tuning in to the Star Wars Legends Lounge. I'm Aaron Moats. May the Force be with you. And remember, there's always a bit of truth in Legends.